Welcome, everybody, to Streams from the Multiverse. I'm StarCraft, and with me I have...
I'm George Alexopoulos.
And...
I'm Unholy Spork or
Uh,
Wendy.
why am I hearing myself? Why am I hearing myself? No. Why did I hear myself? Well, I'm hearing an echo. Okay, that's weird. Why is there an echo?
Couldn't be
I
me.
have no idea.
Are you hearing
Got
that?
headphones on.
Huh.
Were you hearing all that?
I do not.
Let me put on my headphones. That might help a little bit.
Hold on.
Let's see.
Repeat. Oh boy, something's going up here. I don't know what.
How's it now?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm just hearing my voice coming through on my headphones. I don't know what that is.
I don't know.
Technical difficulties.
Yep. Okay. Hold on. Oh, wait. I know what it is. I didn't mute my own end. I did not mute my own end. So I'm hearing on my headphones my own voice coming through on the YouTube video. Okay. We're good. Technical difficulties resolved. So that was an irritating opening and embarrassing on my part.
I'm sure it's
okay.
fine.
So yeah, we have George and we also have
Wendy.
You also go by the handle of Unholy Spork.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm awesome.
Yep. Now, I want to apologize for anyone who doubt anyone's really been wondering, but if any of you have been wondering why I've been kind of slow on the video release lately, I'm not going to get into too much details, but a friend of mine has kind of gone through a bit of a fiasco, and it's kind of put me in a bit of a rut. I assure you, things are straining out, and I will get back to making videos soon. Friend's doing all right, just really threw me for a tizzy. So, yep. But hey, the stream's going to definitely help me get back, going. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But enough about me. George, you're the man of the hour here.
Is that so?
Yep.
That's a little pressure.
Yep. Well, you've got a Indiegogo project that's collecting a lot of comic strips or web comics, I believe you've been doing. So, floor is yours. Just pitch away.
Sure. It's a strip called Probl-O-Matic. I've been drawing it for about 10 years, and I've collected about 550 strips. I'm doing an Indiegogo right now, collecting all of the black and white work, which would be that 550. So it'll be about 300 pages. It's a 4-panel format, sort of like Peanuts or Calvin and Hobbes. And you can read the entire archive if you like at my website, studiomnj.com. If you want to take a look and see if it's for you, or maybe it's not, I don't know. You can go to my Twitter. You can also read the strips that I've been posting there as well. It's a sort of slice of life, quirky characters and funny relationships. And it's about anything and everything, really. I've been told it's a lot of fun. Lots of people like it. So I hope if you're listening, you check it out.
All right. So where did you get the idea to do this at an Indiegogo now, like to collect them all?
Mm-hmm. I had collected them about 200 strips per volume under the name Bite Size a couple of years ago. And recently, I've been wanting to collect them all into a single volume. And I thought this would be a great opportunity because I had gotten into some funny business with Comicsgate and all that stuff. And some people encouraged me. A couple of people encouraged me. They said, oh, you should start an Indiegogo and try to, because all these people suddenly were reading my comic. And it's like, oh, you should try to make a full book, a full collection. And I just wanted to try out the Indiegogo thing, see how it, I was familiar with like Ethan Van Sciver and everybody. And I just wanted to try it out, and it seems to be going really well.
That's good. That's great to hear. Great to hear. Now, this Probl-O-Matic. Now, if somebody knows, there's like a bunch of like different jokes a day. A lot of it is. Are there any reoccurring characters, or is it all just random depending what the situation calls for?
The series is about recurring characters. So there's a handful of main characters now. I think it's like 5-ish. And it's sort of, if you look at Charlie Brown, that sort of thing, it's kind of in that vein. Lately, the stuff I've been posting on my Twitter has been sort of current eventsy, but that's not really problematic itself. I've just been doing strips on the side.
All right. Yep. Because I know there were a few gags in there that kind of, it feels like you'd have to know some of the characters are to get, like the ghost one.
Yeah.
That was on your little, the Indiegogo page.
Yes, that's true. That's the downside to this kind of strip is a lot of the gags later on in the series rely on previous strips. So I almost have to pick and choose which ones I put up on, say, Twitter or Reddit, and they have to make sense out of context. Although a lot of the kind of writing that I enjoy is sort of sequential, linear. So it helps to know the story to get, like, for instance, the main character is really socially awkward. So when he does something that's socially awkward, it's building on all these other times we saw him do that. So it's I guess it's the name of the game. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that. Sadly.
Right.
I wish I could.
I completely understand that. I was just curious because that first joke, I kind of got it because I'm like, oh, she's supposed to be a goth girl or something, but then it's like, yeah, I'm just assuming. So I was just wondering, the whole like, yes, as someone who's dead inside, I find that deeply offensive.
Right, because he's dressed up as a ghost.
Right.
It's
yeah.
Yeah, there's history there. I hope that those strips are at least funny enough that people want to go back and read the archive and get that context. Yep.
I also know, as you said, if the campaign exceeds its budget, you'd love to do an animated fully mini cartoon. You got anything in mind for that? You'd be doing the animation, or do you have anyone in mind to do it?
At the moment, I mean, it would depend on how over budget we're talking, but I know how to animate, so I could theoretically do it myself and have myself and some people I know do voices, that sort of thing. Basically, I would just pick out either my favorite strip or something like that and do like a quick 5-minute animation, something like that.
Nice.
But that would be if we go really over budget.
Right. Like
right now, we're at about 30%, I think.
Yep.
And there's 30 days left.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, from your animation side, I gotta say, you kind of have that, and I'm saying this in the best way, that Brian O'Malley type, or that kind of that mixture of manga and Western style and all that. I mean, is that always what you go for?
That's fair. I know Brian Lee O'Malley and I have a lot of love for manga. So like we grew up on Akira Toriyama and Osamu Tezuka, people like that.
Yep.
So we share a lot of DNA, I would think. We came up, he's older than me, but I'm sure we have enjoyed a lot of the same manga influences.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep. Because I mean, I really like the art style you got. It is so that range between being cute and adorable and at the same time, like when you really needed to like detail it as well.
Yeah, thank you. I especially love, and I lament that I've been changing the strip to color now, and I really love ink work, but it seems that black and white comics don't get as many clicks, especially online. So
oh, that sucks.
I know I don't know. I want the strip to be in black and white, but I also need new readers. So all of this one volume will be all of black and white work. And then from now on, I guess I'm going to be doing colored work. So I thought this would be the perfect place to collect everything.
Right. Because I find that interesting you say that, because a lot, like I've met him personally as well. Have you ever heard of Mega Tokyo?
Yes.
Web series.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, he's been it's still going though. He's been doing it in black and white and still kept it black and white, and that thing is still boom. But so that's always weird though when some like are in black and white. It's like, why did some can do great than others? And then I mean, there's always that little sweet spot,
I think it's because if you start in black and white and they know you for being in black and white, you're going to stick to that and people will come to you through other people. But if you're new starting out and you start in black and white, there's not really anything there to draw a person's eye, like a new audience.
Yeah.
True.
So if you go like maybe a panel or two in color and then do the black and white, have you ever thought of trying that?
there's so many mix and matchy things. Like, for instance, if someone went to my Twitter right now and scrolled down, a lot of the older stuff is black and white, so it's hard to tell the differences between, like, did I already read this? Did I already read this? But if it was in color, it would be a little more obvious.
Right.
So
True.
for online, the quick popcorn snack of a strip, it's easier to recognize a strip. But
Yeah.
artistically speaking, and also print, like printing color is really expensive.
Yeah.
Printing black and white is basically a fourth of the cost because you're only doing 1 ink instead of 4. But who knows? By the time I collect the series from now forward, I'll have my own printer, and that'll take some of the cost off. So maybe.
Now, Wendy, do you have any questions?
Yeah. Where do you draw from the characters? I mean, are these based off of people you know? Are they family members, or do you just like come up with it out of whole cloth?
That's a good one. These strips started as a sort of using myself as the main character just to have something to write about, because I was doing this boring job, and I just wanted to draw something for the sake of drawing it because I didn't want to lose the skills. And eventually sort of the characters became fleshed out and they became their own cast. So I would draw from life, let's say, funny things that happened to me. Like, for instance, a lot of the early strips are about the main character being like perpetually single, you know? And, and that a lot of humor came from that. So he took a lot of my singles jokes, but then I have characters who are in a relationship. And so anytime I knew friends, or if I was in a relationship, I would take those jokes and put those jokes, I would assign those jokes to the couple's characters. So I try to have characters who can fulfill almost any role that I can think of. And lately I have a character who's in high school, and I needed a high school character because if I have something related to, let's say, something happening in a classroom, all of my main characters before were out, they were graduated, let's say. So I needed a character who was in high school. So I developed a character who was in high school already. So the ideas sort of fall into whichever jar fits best, if that answers the question.
Cool.
Yeah, no, that does answer the question. Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Who do you, like, as a cartoonist, what cartoonist did you look up to the most when you were growing up to say, oh my God, I want to be them when I grow up? What made you want to be one?
Wow. There's so many. When I was really young, it was Charles Schulz.
Yeah.
You know, Snoopy, Charlie Brown. I loved it. And my local newspaper only carried the Sunday funnies. And then my mind was blown when I realized there were all these black and whites that I had never read. There were little collections of them.
Yeah.
And then they did the same thing for Calvin and Hobbes. I didn't love Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah. So that, when I was really young, 4-panel strips, and then I got really into anime, manga, video games. So I just emulated my favorite cartoons, and I was not very good at drawing for a long time. But then in middle school and high school, I started to realize that I never stopped drawing comics, and I loved drawing them in class. I didn't do homework. I just drew comics all the time because I wanted to show my friends at lunch. And when it came time to do, when I was going to graduate high school, I realized, you know, this is the thing that I love doing. I may as well try to do this as a job because there's nothing else I want to do. Yeah.
Yep. So, which character would you say out of all of them that are they all somewhat aspects of a little bit yourself, or they're just like, is there, besides you said the one with the singles jokes and all that, but is there ever a character you kind of connect to the most?
That's a good question. It depends on my mood, right? I give each of them a little piece of, like if you read Harry Potter, you know, it's Horcruxes, you know, they give you a little piece of your soul, right?
Yep.
So the main character, Greg, is very emo, and he's very soft and emotional, and he loves black and white movies, and he reads poetry and stuff. So that's that side of me. And then his imaginary best friend, Xavier, is my prickly side, let's say. Dry, angry, short-tempered.
Right.
And then I have this couple who I sort of see as one person, Duncan and Francine. They're married now in the strip, and I have a lot of great couples jokes. Like, for instance, Duncan will lean over and kiss his wife and fart at the same time. And
Yep, I saw that one on the in the Indiegogo.
and that's, you know, I'm not going to say too much, but, you know, I know a guy who knows a guy, and that happened. And
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
And
Was he told to sleep in the bathroom like in the strip?
no, he did not sleep in the bathroom. But I love that recurring joke. Like, I almost want him to start liking it. Because part of that couple's, what I really love about that couple is that they drive each other crazy a lot, like I Love Lucy, if you've ever seen it.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So the more they have very strong personalities, but they love each other at the same time. So they drive each other nuts. Like, Francine has not slept in like 40 days ever since their honeymoon because he snores.
Oh no.
And so she's having these bad nightmares, and she has not slept. And there's like all these different storylines that I want to. She's slowly going out of her mind, but she loves him, and he doesn't know that he's doing this because she doesn't tell him. And it's really funny. I think it's funny.
Oh, I know that sounds hilarious.
It's just very like, if people try to tell me what the strip is about, I almost don't know how to answer it. It's just about these dumb things that happen to real people, but also there's all kinds of like fourth wall breaking. You know, there's superheroes apparently in this world, but he's not one of them. He's just a normal person, but he's jealous of them. I don't know. It's just lots of silly humor, that Monty Python-ish, maybe. I don't know.
Right. Now, you mentioned about his Comicsgate. How did what is your any connection you've had with Comicsgate, like, and all that?
Okay. Well, I was aware of Comicsgate back when Ethan Van Sciver was doing, let's see, he was doing a lot of reviews, and not reviews, but criticisms of The Last Jedi and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody was doing their reviews of The Last Jedi. And I guess I came across this channel where he was pointing at his screen and like yelling at his tablet, and he was cracking me up. So I followed him, and then I saw that he was doing the whole thing with Cyberfrog and everything, and the culture war in general. And I said, wow, I need to follow this guy. I need to support this guy. So I became a fan of his. And flash forward to like December of a couple months ago, and I got involved with this funny business with Reddit where they basically a whole lot of people read a bunch of my strips, and then they realized that I was not one of them, let's say. And so they tried to give me a really hard time, and I was reaching out to everybody that I could try to, you know, is anyone out there on the internet able to at least hear my side of the story? Because they were saying a lot of cruel things that weren't true about me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I jumped on Ethan's stream. He was kind enough to invite me, and I got plugged in with everybody. And the past couple of months have been really, really fun, and I got to meet so many people.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I saw you. I saw you were going through so much with all that Reddit stuff, and you were just kind of like sitting there crying out, you know, is anybody going to listen? Somebody help me. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And that's when I got involved, and I saw your work, and I was like, holy crap, I love this. And
I'm really grateful.
I was like, oh my God, you guys got to check this guy out. And that's when I recommended you to Robert. And I really, really love it. It always reminds me sort of a mix of the old patriarchy comics and the old, like the Scott Pilgrim stuff mixed with that.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, let's see. If I started drawing it 10 years ago, I guess there were hints of the culture war, but I never really blew up with that strip. Like I've occasionally dipped my toe into a self-publishing, and I've had a couple of graphic novels published, but my career never really went anywhere. But then there was this giant flash out of nowhere.
Right.
And you know, just a little bit of digging. People see things on my Twitter that they don't like, and then next thing you know, they're saying all this, like, you know, with all that Renfamous business. But
yeah, no kidding.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said her name. But
no, it's all right. It's all right.
Well, you know, they love a good target.
Right, but hey, tell me about it. What I'll just say it. What got me finally fed up, because I used to be the kind of person like, okay, can we please be civil? Please, people, like trying to talk people down. But what got me over the ledge was when, well, after trying to defend Nerdette, Tristan, over stuff, Renfamous going at her, but then claiming, you tagged me in here. I ended this argument, so this is all on you. Hey, people, she tagged me in here. Go get her. And I basically kept showing screenshots saying, no, she did not. I ended up getting shadow banned.
Maybe
I
that
got
was a
shadow
favor.
banned because obviously her minions, her, cult, basically, sent complaints. What kind of complaints? I don't know.
They love a good bad guy. It seems that that's the only content they can produce. They can't make comics. They can't make good comics. So they need some kind of content.
Oh, geez. Imagine if Joe Quesada did give Ren a comic just to spite everyone. I think it would be worse than Gabby Rivera, because at least Gabby had some semblance of writing beforehand. Not very good, but at least she had some young adult novelizations. What does Ren have? Zippo!
I would very much like to read that comic, but in a very... As a person who reads comics, I want to hear what she has to say. I think, well, it's like what they say, sunlight is a great disinfectant, right? Why not put your ideas out there and let them be scrutinized? I'm not going to scrutinize you as a person, but I want to read the kind of stories you have to write.
True.
When I heard from her a couple of days ago, and she apparently has heard of me, but I didn't know if she was a creator or what. So I thought she has this giant following. And then I had to ask people to explain to me, wait, so she's a former cosplayer, blah, blah. I don't get it.
Former for a reason.
I don't know, but a lot of these critics, at least there's people in anti-comicsgate, let's call it, who are creators, so I can at least read their work and determine whether or not, okay, you are either do or do not produce something that I want to consume. That's the whole point of Comicsgate as far as I knew. It's about comics.
Yeah.
So I don't know what this Renfamous has to do with my career. If she doesn't make comics, why?
Unfortunately, it's because people like Joe Quesada give her legitimacy.
Well,
yes.
That's the downside. They give her legitimacy and a voice where they basically like, oh no, she's our cheerleader. And because of that, she has just as much power as if she was a creator. In their eyes.
There can be room for, like, let's say, critics in the game industry.
Yep.
They used to be consumer advocates. They play the games so that we don't have to go through the bad ones, and they can recommend the good ones. But then it's sort of like they become more powerful as middlemen than the creators themselves.
Because that way they could get the bonus stuff like advanced copies or things like that. And they realize if they started talking honestly, they're not going to get jack shit.
There's a sort of cult of personality that happens, but that can go for good or for bad, I suppose. But like, I had a lot of critics that I was fans of, but they were not creators. So I kept a certain distance from, if they said a game was good or bad, I would take that with a grain of salt and maybe I would still play it. But what I'm trying to say is, like, even though they weren't creators, I still gave them my ear. So in the same sense, somebody like this individual in question might have something important to say. But if you actually scrutinize their words, no, they're just stirring the pot. I don't see the value in that.
Right.
Like,
Sorry. No, I was just saying, it's kind of like, look, I agree with you completely. That's why that's why part of the reason why I always consider myself so Comicsgate adjacent. I'm not full on Comicsgate, never have been. I have most of my views, believe with a lot of views. It's just some of the tactics I don't agree with. And one of which has always been, I'm probably better at separating the art from the artist, but I'm always have to believe, unless they come at me directly, I'm sorry, call me selfish, call me what you will. I choose to still stick it through until they make it personal. And I would say, I'll say this, getting blackbotted does not make it personal in my eyes, sadly, because that usually means like, okay, I got caught in the crossfire, but it wasn't at me personally. They just simply didn't care. Whereas someone like John Layman, he came after me directly.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you saw the thread or you saw the stuff that Tug had shown a while ago of how I got treated by him.
I have not, no.
Oh yeah, he just went off of me, and I was being completely reasonable, but in his eyes, nope. You were following DNC. You are just as bad as he is in a lot of them. You are bad. You are evil, but guilt by association. Ugh.
I don't know. If somebody doesn't want to give you the benefit of the doubt, maybe it's not worth talking to them. I
Oh,
don't like shutting people off. Like I
Me
had
neither.
to block certain people recently, but
Yep.
anybody who's sane, I think would at least, oh, I heard something about you, George. Is this true? Like I have,
That's what I do. That's what I do with people. I usually
that's what a
ask.
sane person would do. But I
Exa-
think there's a certain cult mentality happening where, oh, that person's a sinner. Don't talk to them because you're going to catch it.
And sometimes when I think that, hear that, I think, no, they're more saying that and you talk to them, and and I won't say they'll reveal the lies what you've been hearing, but more of a case of they'll give you a different perspective, and you might get away from us or walk away from us.
Right. They need cult members so that their cult can thrive. Like
Exactly, and that's what I look at with someone like Ren. She has a cult. That's what she has. She has a complete and utter cult.
well, she's
they
part
need
of it, right?
somebody to preach at. They
Yeah.
need somebody to listen to them and say, you know what, you're right. I'm going to listen to you, and then I'm going to tell all my friends about it and bring them. They need a congregation.
Yeah.
And it's just like, because that's what sometimes it's just bizarre. Some of the logic they will jump through. Some of the, I mean, I've told Wendy this once before. I've been rewatching that series of web YouTube videos, Down the Rabbit Hole. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Oh, it's about all this stuff, like a lot of either internet people or sometimes old-fashioned stories that where things started out one way and soon went downhill.
Mhm.
And oh, hey, no, wait. He just said, hey. But I see Ren as a new episode of that series in the making, where eventually the guy who does it, Frederick something, I forget his last name, but he's gonna probably eventually do something about her, how all this happened and maybe all this anti-comics gate. But it feels like, given how she's been acting, especially given her recent live stream, it really feels like she truly believes the stuff she believes. And some of the people like Joe Quesada are feeding into her, not realizing what they're unleashing. Or not caring.
When people get, I guess, financially desperate, they start to invite people into their business that maybe they wouldn't have if they were more lucid-minded.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on with Ren this much. I'm sorry.
We're not even talking about her specifically. We're talking. There is a general culture war that everyone's been talking about lately, especially after 2016.
Oh, no kidding! It was building up, but when Trump got elected, boom!
They were hitting the hornet's nest. But I became aware of it back in high school. Actually, I was thinking these people, if they gained power, they could be really dangerous. Like,
wait, how old are you, by the way? If you don't mind my asking.
No problem. I'm 33 now, so this would have been.
Hey, I'm older than you at least. I'm by a year.
Yeah. I'm older than
when I was in high school. But when I was in high, what?
Go on.
I'll say, when I was in high school, I didn't really pay attention to that. It was only the past couple of years before 2016 that I started noticing it. It was, I'll be honest, it was during the Obama years when I started realizing what the hell is going on. Why are these people saying this stuff? Why are people now all of a sudden citing one? That was during those 8 years where things became one way or the other divided. And that disturbed me so much.
There were little hints of it.
Money for playing into everybody's like hurt feelings and creating a huge market of stuff for people on both sides. They have a huge financial investment in keeping the two sides fighting. Exactly. I mean, even with us, there's a huge amount of money involved in the two sides of Comicsgate.
Oh, yeah. No kidding.
Yeah, it's in everybody's best interest to kind of keep us fighting. Because if we don't fight, there's not going to be that, well, I'll pay money on my side and you pay money on your side and we'll see who wins.
Right. And as far as with one thing I have noticed, and this has been really sad for someone like me, is that I grew up watching a lot of web series and everything, like or podcasts, for example. And I realized throughout the bulk of their existence was during the Obama years. So, of course, they didn't talk much politics because they felt they were happy. They didn't show their true sides because their true side was in power. And their own political sides. They didn't feel the need to say anything. They're like, hey, everything's going hunky-dory. We don't need to talk about our politics. And you think, oh, these are guys I want to hang out with, people I could talk with, even though we might agree to disagree, things like that. Then 2016 came, and good Lord, it was night and day. To the point where I've stopped listening to so many of the podcasts I used to listen to, especially once I heard how this group of comic book podcasts, because they all became good friends and networking within each other, to the point where, yeah, they pretty much will blacklist you and basically make sure they will never give you a single, if you're a conservative, even just remotely conservative, even if you are the nicest guy in the world, you're conservative, they will blacklist you and make sure that you get no stuff, and that you do, if you're starting off, you will not get off the ground. And it's just like, I stopped listening after all of them after that. So many of them I stopped listening to.
Yeah.
And for someone like me, these are people who got me through rough times at my old job.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's a new thing, though, because, I mean, yeah, in terms of online, sorry, I'm going to purge about this a little bit because politics is amusing to me. I mean, if you look at, like, when Clinton was elected, I mean, my first vote, I hate to admit this, was, like, for one of the Bushes, like the first one.
George H.W.?
Yeah, I'm old, dude. Let's just say I'm old. And I mean, politics around then was just as virulent and nasty as it is now. It's just we have the internet, and since we're always there, it's shoved in our faces. I mean, before it was the newspaper, it was news programs, it was NPR, it was Rush Limbaugh, it was all that stuff. So it was still going on. It just wasn't in our face 24/7 like it is on the internet.
And people believing that, and I know that though, because they didn't have that internet, the internet to do it, some people just thought, oh, I'm sure there's some people out there, but I don't know. And now people are so convinced, this small pocket, it's not a small pocket, it represents the entire world.
Yeah.
Because, you have that small percentage. I mean, there's a reason why they keep on pointing out these far, the really extreme left make up really 8% of the country. But as far as they're concerned, they represent everything.
And they're concerned. They think the same thing about, the conservatives, that, there may only be like small pockets of Nazis or white supremacists, but they see it online. So it's got to be everywhere. All of them are like that. Oh my God. It's not true. We see it up in our faces so much online that we think it's everywhere, and it's not.
Well, their whole narrative depends on there being bad guys to fight. If there aren't, if they're in peacetime, then all they have left to do is produce books, which they don't have the talent to do, apparently.
Exactly. And it's like the whole notion with the feminist movement. They got most of what they wanted, but now those who were basically like, okay, got what we wanted, back off. Now you have the really extreme voices saying like, we need more.
Well, there was a movie years ago. Have you guys heard of Chasing Amy by Kevin Smith?
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
That was my movie. I grew up with that one, and Clerks, of course. But Chasing Amy was interesting because I didn't understand what comics conventions were. And, but there was a scene where they went to what I later learned was a panel, and there was this the black guy and Hooper X, I think his name was, and he pretended to be like a super white hating, he shot a fake gun, and there was the character whose name I forget, who was lesbian, and it was a panel about, let's say, minority voices in comics. And the whole movie was about sort of making sure that people like them are able to create comics, which they absolutely should. And they had spaces, let's say at a convention in New York City, where they needed to make their indie comics. And in a way, Comicsgate is indie comics.
Oh, yeah.
But if you look at, like, let's say I go to a thing called Small Press Expo, which I may not ever be able to go to again. Where if I was wondering with a couple of my friends before I went last time this past year, if I wore a MAGA hat, I think, like, how many seconds before I either get punched or kicked out, just to see what happens. Like, I didn't vote for Trump, but I was curious to see what would happen. And I was thinking, like, we've come a long way since Chasing Amy, when the minority voices were like, they just wanted to be included. And that's totally okay. Everybody should and can make comics. But now there's this, it seems that because they've gained all this power, I suppose. It's like, oh, not only do we want to be equals, we want to kick out the people who used to quote unquote oppress us, which if you've ever tried to self-publish a comic, you have no advantages. It doesn't matter who you are.
Well, a lot of that is also because of Diamond, let's be honest.
Yeah, Diamond does not help self-publishers at all, but the internet incidentally has helped out with self-publishing a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's why that's why webcomics were booming at the beginning of the internet.
Yes. And
Penny
they still
Arcade.
Can. Yeah, I love Penny Arcade. Oh, I stopped reading them after a certain point, but
yeah, no kidding. I'm just using that as an example, you know.
But this, Comicsgate now I mean, they're using the wind in their sails of all this fighting to say, hey, look, indie comics is still a thing, and we want people to read our stuff, which is fine. I think there has to be more of a push to say we are the actual all-inclusive group, and the other groups are trying to make this narrative happen where we're trying to exclude people, we're trying to be mean to people, all the things, all the lies that they're trying to say about Ethan and all those people and stuff.
I mean, it's like for the longest time, and I'll be honest, I do really think Nerdette really turned a bit the tide, and she was more revealing of her face about, you know, who she is. I think, and you do, Wendy, to an extent, but Tristan with a bigger voice of showing off that, like, here's an openly, woman girl, big geek girl, openly shows her face that she's a geek girl, and basically is shot down a lot of the the bashing and or the there's no women there, there's this and that. I mean, because let's be honest, when you have people like Lola and all that, she still she's somebody taking those cleavage shots, but for the most part, her avatars don't usually represent her. No, that's not her ass.
Oh yeah, when I first showed up, they were like, "Oh, you're not really a woman," and then when they find out that not only am I a woman, but that I was a practicing bisexual, I'm not white, they're all of a sudden, well, you're a gender traitor, you're a race traitor, you're a horrible person.
Once you start getting into that.
Yeah, they want to include everybody except the people who don't agree with them. And then if you happen to be one of the people they speak for, quote unquote, and you tell them, wait, you don't speak for me, they're like, well, you're not really one of them.
And then, or worse, they start accusing you of being Comicsgate's shield, or they're using you as a shield, or they're just using you. You're too stupid to realize it.
Oh, yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've been called pardon the language, but a pick-me-ass bitch.
And again, it's like, and that, have you ever noticed that with people in Comicsgate, if someone ends up pulling traitor or whatever, they don't say, oh, see, all that. They're more of a case of like, wow, what the heck? They're more, okay. Actually, I don't want to get into that topic. I realize that goes more divisive than I was hoping for, but.
Well, inclusivity is kind of a hard word that gets thrown around, but really what I think Comicsgate wants to be, and we need to work to communicate this better, is we don't want there to be any sort of barriers of entry. Anybody can make a comic and publish it. And the only thing I think that the only people that we wouldn't want to be associated with it are political extremists in any direction. Just come make some comics. And what I also think, I wish I could talk to the big cheeses about this. Like, we also need, like, for instance, I have a comic strip. It's not a superhero strip, but Comicsgate used to be associated with mostly, kind of the standard stuff you would find on a comic book shelf now. It's power fantasy, superhero stuff, action, which is totally fine. But I also think in America, we have this entire industry that's just untapped. People who love manga and anime and stuff like that. Young women especially want to read comics, but they need comics that they would be interested in. So I think we have to also open our arms, metaphorically speaking, and say, listen, we want everybody who loves comics and wants to be involved in the indie movement of 2019 plus, come and make comics, and we actually are all inclusive. Come and make your comics about anything. Well, just don't be a jerk. That's our only rule.
When did comics get to be just one thing? Because, back in the beginning, there were romance comic books, there were horror comic books, there was suspense, there was drama comic books, there was all this stuff.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden it's just one thing. It's
Or
magic,
a
it's
group of things.
fantasy, it's
Yeah.
action.
Well, American comics have always had, like, that's the bread and butter.
Yeah, it has become that more and more.
Compared to Japan, let's say, in order to consume comics, sort of up until recently, you have to go to a comic shop and you have to go out of your way. And I don't think most people who aren't into comics right now are willing to. That's why bookstores were a big deal in the early 2000s and mid 2010s. So all these people were into manga who didn't even read comics before, but it's like, wait, there's all these stories about all these different things. And because they were already hanging out at Barnes & Noble, they had access to all these different types of books. And now that we're on the internet, it's like all we are really, the only distance between us and our new customers is getting them to read our stuff and also getting away from the stigma that we're bad people. Please come read our stuff. It's actually really good. And don't believe the people who are saying that we're bad people.
Exactly.
There has to be, we have to shake off this stigma. It's going to take work, but if we
think with like the web comics boom of, like the early internet and how web comics were such a huge thing, they weren't all about like the superhero power fantasy.
No, they were a lot of them were slice of life.
Yeah, they were tons and tons of different things. So why did Marvel and DC and all these other presses not look at that and go, hey, it's doing really good in Japan and the manga's doing really good in America, and then all this webcomic stuff is doing pretty good. Why don't we go back to our old format and put all this crap out there?
To be fair, Marvel did try that a couple of times. Didn't work.
American manga,
Spider-Man, things like that, or they tried to do some of those.
The difference between just printing stuff and doing a little bit of advertising for it and then getting out there and selling it to people. You've got to make an investment. It's like they say, you got to spend money to make money. They didn't put the work in to get it out to the people to actually sell it.
True. And then, of course, we got other cases like, oh, let's do a romance book. And look at this one that Mark Millar did called Trouble.
Yeah,
we tried. There was a publisher. That's right. Back in when I was getting started, there was a publisher named Tokyo Pop that I worked with. My first book was actually published by them, and they were publishing all kinds of different genres, especially because we all loved manga. So mine was like kind of this romance, but also sad and blah blah whatever.
Yeah.
But I deliberately wanted to do stories that were not American comics, as far from American comics as possible. And I think a lot of us were trying. And I think the biggest smash hit of that era was Scott Pilgrim. But the recession hit just as Scott Pilgrim was doing really well, and so a lot of publishers went out of business. And the only reason Oni Press survived was because of Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, no kidding.
That was just bad luck, but also bad management, because you hear stories of things going on behind the scenes. But we needed more American, let's say, manga. But those kinds of stories, we were really going to open that up, but we just hit that huge bad luck black hole, and a lot of people went out of business and they changed careers.
Right.
I was getting ready to do full-time comics, graphic novels. I wrote all these books.
Ooh.
But then they couldn't work with me anymore, and I could not get any other publisher to talk to me. I tried every publisher, and they just weren't interested in what I had to make. Jeez. So they weren't willing to make the investment, and then I just went indie. So I did all, like, the stuff on my Indiegogo now is just the kind of stuff that I did on my spare time at my other day jobs. But I still love comics. There's nothing that's going to stop me from writing and drawing stories. It's just, if you can do it full time, that means you can make more stories. So that's really the dream, isn't it? Any creator wants to be able to do it full time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's why even I'm building up what I can. Like, I've been having this idea for my own fiction, comic and all that stuff in my head for years. And, I had a guy that did a lot of the artwork. I've been going to conventions, having pros do commissions of my characters, just so I can be able to show them off and everything. or in one case, actually make some additions that I never thought about. And basically, like, I'm hoping to one day get it out there just to get it out there. I'm not even trying to make a living out of it because I have a good job going and all that. So,
Yeah.
you know, and that's what I'm hoping to do with my stuff, is just get it out there and show it, because I always used to have this dream of getting to the comic book industry, and I'm grateful I'm more of a DC guy than a Marvel guy, because there's no way I want to go anywhere near Marvel. But,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, at least DC, I still feel like I have a shot.
Well,
Slim as
indie
it is.
comics, the big two they're not willing to take the gambles. It's the
Oh, no, I'm not saying for the gamble. I'm saying, but just to write one of their characters. But as far as doing my own stuff, I would get it out there on my own.
That's the way to do it, really. I mean,
Yeah.
that's this little network we have. Everybody knows each other. Hopefully, it's what do they call it? A meritocracy. The best, the most talented stories,
Yep.
the best stories. Those are the ones that are going to rise. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
So we do our best to put our work out there, and if the people like it, hopefully they'll share it around. That's all you can hope for.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, I've seen so many others. Like, I've read through the Lone Star book, and Jawbreaker is finally going to be out soon.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for that. And, you know, you just see all this stuff, and you just know, like, even with Ironsides, for example. Oh, was it the greatest thing I ever read? No, but it was still entertaining and still a lot better than some of the other crap I've been reading. And you can definitely tell when someone's actually giving it a try and they have nothing else to lose, whereas people who are not trying still don't have anything else to lose and rather just use it as mouthpieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big difference. I think most audiences can sense between propaganda and real creative writing. Creative writing is almost like you are a medium, like if you were a spirit medium, right? Talking to ghosts and they're talking through you.
Yep.
When you're writing and you're really in the flow, it's almost as if your characters are talking through you.
It's like James. Well, that's one thing I love about James DeMatteis, is his old belief, and he still believes it to this day, is the story is a living thing, and it tells, and it's not ready, and it's not delayed. It's just not ready yet. I mean, look at what eventually led to the story that became Kraven's Last Hunt, or Fearful Symmetry, as it was originally called. That took years to start off as a Batman story. Eventually, he told the Batman variation as Going Sane, but beforehand, it was something else entirely, and eventually he went to Spider-Man, and then he originally had this one villain in mind, but then once he went through the Marvel handbook and saw Kraven was Russian, and he still doesn't know whether or not that was just something that was added or that was established beforehand. He still doesn't know, but he's like, wait a minute. Forget this original character. I'm going to do Kraven instead.
That's
and
cool.
Then eventually realized, I got to kill him. I got to kill Kraven at the end. It's the only way for the story to end.
Yeah.
And it was basically the story of the sentient being. And I think that's what brings out the best stories. It's stories that just build and build based off of natural storytelling. And that's the problem with some of these writers. They don't want to build a story. They just want to force a story.
Yeah. Stories are very organic. They build themselves. And a lot of the recent comic book writers,
some exceptions,
with some exceptions, it seems like, I hate to put it this way, they don't leave their homes very much, because a story can build itself out of going to the store or hearing people talk on the bus or in the line at the store. It grows from so many different parts and pieces that you get during your day. And if you just sit at home and play online, it's
and read Twitter all day.
You write the same stuff over and over and over again.
You want to bet that's why you want to bet that's why Amazing Spider-Man 800 was so awesome? If Dan Slott actually took some time off Twitter beforehand and probably got out of the house finally.
Well, there is a very notorious writer who tends to put a lot of, shall we say, eating in their pieces. And you can tell that they don't spend an awful lot of time in places other than, shall we say, going out to eat, or not spending a lot of time with real people, just people that reinforce their own beliefs.
That's really funny.
And you don't get real characters out of a caricature of a relationship.
Exactly.
If people who are around you only parrot your own beliefs back at you, you can't write real conflict and resolution because there's none in your life.
Or you're not willing, or even if you don't have it, like with me, I haven't had that much conflict in my life, but I've read enough conflicts from other stories and seen, I've actually picked them, and I've also heard about other conflicts that I have a better understanding, at least to the point where, like, for example, one of my characters is bisexual, but she doesn't have developed her first crush until, female crush, because she's a girl, until she meets one of the other main characters. But even then, it's a bit of a complicated thing. You know what I mean? It's not that clean cut, oh, she's hot, I want to screw her. It's like, that's her first real case of meeting the whole a girl I'd go gay for kind of a thing. But she's never had that feeling before. Not even was I seeing celebrities or whatever. So that she doesn't know how to feel about that. So she's like mistaking it for real. And then afterwards, it gets to a point where she dies. Now she's an alien, so through certain circumstances, she comes back. But during that point, the other girl then starts to feel that mourning period. Then when the original bisexual girl comes back, the other girl is then, Abby's the alien girl, Minerva's the normal girl. Minerva, then she didn't get through the whole mourning period, so she's feeling this overwhelming of emotions, and then just mistakes that for real love. It's a complicated thing that led all up to this. They start a relationship, and soon it's during it that Minerva's, Abby's thinking this is full on real. Minerva is slowly realizing, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
But it's one of those, I know I'm going to have to make sure I write it carefully, obviously, but, it's like one of those only in comic books things.
Well, you have to observe relationships to be able to write about them. Right. And if you don't observe relationships, you can't write about real relationships.
And I've observed plenty of relationships before.
Did you guys watch Game of Thrones or read it?
No, unfortunately, I've been so behind. I never got started, but I know all about it.
Sorry to bring it up then. I was going to say,
it's all right. It's all right.
The TV show has passed the books story-wise. And
heard about that.
There have been complaints, specifically my complaints, I would say. I can't speak for other people, where once the show passed the books, a certain richness in the storytelling was lost. And when you have to write under a schedule and you don't have certain, let's say,
you don't have a guiding force or a structure.
Right. Writing is really the backbone of all these projects. And really the essence of writing is you sitting at your desk or walking around or doing other things and thinking about your story, and the story has to come to you. If like George R.R. Martin is the writer, he's notoriously slow at writing. He's right now.
He just said it's going to take another 6 years.
It's possible. Yep. I mean, but what he's doing really is he's waiting for the story. It's like fishing. He's just got the fishing rod in the water and he's waiting for some fish to bite. You can't force a story or it's going to turn into what I think is a disappointing story. And I don't like the latest seasons of Game of Thrones.
Oh, I've heard that like they're rushing through, like it's taking them faster to get from one place to another when it took them seasons to get to that point.
Yeah. And they're making very safe decisions. Where the original series was so famous is because you never know who's going to die, for example.
Oh yeah, the Red Wedding. The Red Wedding.
Right. All your main characters, they could die at any second. But now it seems like the story is going in this very predictable, almost stereotypical direction. And it's the same with Lord of the Rings was really fresh and original because there was so much lore that they were packing into those 3 movies. But then they stretched The Hobbit. And they sort of did this.
But that was, of course, let's be honest, not much of a choice.
No, it was, for whatever reason, let's say, it was a story that had things added to it that wasn't there originally, etc. Or they just tried.
Or taken from other books.
It felt manufactured, let's say.
Shoehorned in, yeah.
Right. Whereas they had to cut so much content from the original trilogy.
Yeah, to be fair, though, if I recall right, wasn't the Battle of the 3 Armies mostly done off screen?
Yeah, Bilbo got knocked out and then he woke up after.
Yeah, so I think having a chance to actually expand on that a bit did give some element, freedom in that regard, even though they ended up still wasting it. But, that's still like a gold mine to tap into.
That could have been, yeah. I guess.
Just in that one instance. I'm not talking about everything else. Just in the Three Armies instance.
But they say even J.K. Rowling talked about this when she was writing Harry Potter. You have to, as the writer, you have to know so much more of your story than you're actually telling.
Oh, exactly. I mean, come on. Who could predict so much of stuff that we would get by the last book?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So good storytelling really has to be this sort of thing where, like, if you, again, I talked about spirit mediums in that lame way, but like, you know all of your characters and all of their backstories way before you're telling this story. You can't just be improvising the story as you go. That's a first draft. You never publish your first draft.
Oh, yeah.
You have to go back. And like, I've had some stories that have been, 5 drafts in, and I still don't want to publish it. But
hey, it's like, again, I'm sorry, I don't want to keep bringing my stuff up, but it's the best thing I can go off of. I do intend on this being mostly an ongoing, but I do always have an end point in mind, because these are going to be characters that are going to age, get older. So a lot of them are trying to get what story they can during those ages, but a lot of them are going to probably have to drop some other ones. But I do always have a general end goal in mind for the main generation of heroes before it moves on to the next. But one of which I always want to be careful on is falling in love with certain characters. I think that's always one of the big fault points some people have. You know what I mean? Is that eventually, once you fall in love with a character, they end up becoming the author Sue or whatever, the canon Sue.
Oh my God. Okay. So
Wesley Crusher, anyone?
Dude, there is a web comic artist.
Mm-hmm.
God, I think she went by. There's she's hugely problematic.
Oh.
But she's known for. She would write a comic and then rewrite it, and then rewrite it, and then rewrite it. God, I think her name was. It used to be Purple Kecleon, and then it was Glitched Puppet. She wrote the Floriverse.
Never heard of
it. Trust me, you don't want to. But she put herself as the main character.
Oh, boy.
And when she liked a new character, she just completely abandoned the storyline and put herself in a new character, and then wrote a new storyline for that. And then when she stopped liking that character, she'd write another one, abandon that new storyline, and then go off in another way. And it's hard to see somebody who has an amazing world that they're building that does that crap, because they may think they're doing something awesome, but everybody watching them is going, hey, but what about over here?
Oh, who cares about over there?
What about over there? And she's just like, I really hate to say it, but every single artist I've ever met, I've pointed her out and said, please don't do this.
Oh, I assure you, I'm more talking about as far as falling for a character. Either you may give them too much focus, or you end up like, making them almost a Sue in that you don't want to kill the character off.
Yes.
And it's like, now there's one in particular, my main character, Jewel. It would have to be like a huge criteria for me to ever kill her off. But at the same time, no, I wouldn't put her into a situation where I write her into it where, she has to die. There's no explanation unless I end up catching myself in it. And I'm like, oh crap. But but I'm always promising myself, if I get there, I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm not going to just pull a Deus Ex Machina to get her out of there.
Yeah.
Because I put myself in that corner. I mean, I've only done that once, but that's because I was writing it intentionally with a backdoor for her to come out of it better.
True.
Well, that's the case where I do that intentionally, but at the same time, no, I'm not going to hint off to it because I really want people to think she's dead and have her off the board for a while. But when she does come back, I make it very clear, no, this was my intent from the get-go.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean by that, right?
Yeah, I could see.
Basically, she's a robot. She jumps into someone else's head, a copy of her head, and eventually takes over.
Dang.
Yep. It's all right. Okay. Very super heroics.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I'm sorry. We're going all over the place.
All right. Okay. So do you have any advice for new artists? Because I know my daughter is like, she draws all the time. And she wants to be an animator and do her own comic strips. Is there any
Aw.
suggestions that you would have to somebody who's young and wants to do what you're doing?
I guess it's good to have versatility in your skill set and be able and willing to go between different mediums. And the reason I say that is we don't know, like, depending on her age, we don't know what's going to be a dominant medium by the time she gets to, say, 18 to 22 when she graduates. So maybe comics will be viable then. So in that case, practice drawing comics. That's very helpful. But also just having strong fundamentals in drawing is, for any artistic medium, it could be animation, it could be even games development, which is a huge industry right now and probably will be for the foreseeable future. 3D animation, that sort of thing. Being able to just draw is really, really critical for all the other skills that you would need to adapt to other mediums. So I don't know what kind of jobs will be available when she grows up, but having a lot of time put into drawing, just raw drawing, will get you really far if you ever want to learn, say, 3D or painting backgrounds for video games or animation or even comics. I think comics by themselves, if she's just practicing by herself, comics are one of the best ways you can keep practicing and keep improving as you're getting older, because there's something called the 10,000 hour rule, if you've ever heard of it.
No.
Well, the basic premise, I don't know how true it is, but if you practice anything for 10,000 hours, you'll master it, they say. So that's roughly 10 years of practice full time. I think something like that. So if let's say I started really drawing hard in middle school and I was terrible until I was in the middle of, let's say, my college age years, although I only went to art school for 1 year. But let's say 10 years of practice, I got to an acceptable level, then I put out a book, then I did another 10 years, and now I think I'm confident enough to say, like, okay, I actually can do professional work now. So it took me 15, 20 years to be that comfortable. But if you start young enough, why not? If you just draw your own strip or your own graphic novel series when you're that young, by the time you're old enough to look for jobs, you'll have already practiced 10,000 hours. So as young as she is, I would say the best advice is start doing your own graphic novel series, like manga or comics in general. Make your own story and just go nuts with it. Draw as many pages as you can. That's my advice.
Right.
Cool. And what about like diversity of art styles? Because she's got a very like specific style, and she's taking an art class, and they keep having her do like real life drawing, and she hates it with a passion. And I keep trying to explain to her, you're not going to go to Cal Arts. You're not going to get into
No. Don't send her to Cal Arts.
I've heard things.
Oh, that's the college she wants to go to.
I mean, I can understand why.
Well, it's also close to home, so there's that too. But she hates real life drawing, and she doesn't seem to understand that you need that.
You need it for the starting point, at the very least, to get a reference.
Yeah, how can you draw anything that looks like a human if you don't know how to draw a human?
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of these people, even those who start off at Cal Arts, probably have some understanding of human anatomy. Otherwise, you don't want to end up like, maybe not Rob Liefeld, but those Rob Liefeld wannabes.
Oh, or R.C. Dart or whatever her name is.
Yeah. Yeah, the ones who you could definitely tell you're like, what? Do you even know how anatomy works?
Yeah, but how can I get her to realize or work with something that she hates so that she can actually grow as an artist?
That's an excellent question. Have you heard, or I guess it would depend on the student, because I used to teach art as well. But what I would tell students is, I guess for starters, if you're familiar with RPGs or role-playing games at all,
yeah,
the way that you get your characters stronger is you make them fight enemies and they gain experience points.
Leveling up, yeah.
So yeah, you level up by gaining experience points, basically. If anyone doesn't know, that's no problem. But the way when you're drawing, the way that you gain the most experience points is by drawing things that are in front of you in the real world in 3D. You actually gain less experience points if you're copying something from a flat surface like a screen or a paper. So if she wants to learn fast, now that's up to her, but if she wants to learn faster, she should try to force herself to grind experience points by drawing things that are in the real world. The reason I encourage that is that cartooning is actually closer to symbols than reproducing things that are in a 3D space. Flat cartoons, like let's say Steven Universe is really popular or whatever, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Let me just say in defense of that, I do like Steven Universe. I think they kind of got that style good for it. It's just everyone's been starting to emulate ever since.
Yeah, and they copied Brian Lee O'Malley, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Who copied all kinds of great manga artists. So there's a lot of DNA that's...
Although you can tell, one thing I would say about Brian Lee O'Malley is you can tell the difference between Scott Pilgrim and Seconds.
Yeah.
That was the other graphic novel he did, the graphic novel he did. You can definitely tell there's a big difference between the two. There's still... The DNA is still there, that it's him, but you can definitely tell one's less manga-ish than the other.
Yeah, he like a lot of artists, if you just keep going, you want to always be developing your style. But if someone wants to learn the CalArts style, let's say, those kinds of cartoons are actually closer to silhouettes and icons than actual 3D drawing. So she may be right, your daughter. If she wants to learn that kind of style, it may be better for her to copy 2D stuff. But the downside to that is if anyone ever needs her to draw anything besides those, she won't have the skills to adapt. If you learn from 3D and you've trained your hand to obey you, then you can do symbols and cartoons way easier because you've trained your hand. It's like, if you've ever listened to jazz music and jazz piano players and stuff like that, they're classically trained, but they play jazz because they're so comfortable with the keyboard. They'll just say, oh, in a split second, what happens if I hit these keys now? Right. They're able to improvise because they've mastered the instrument.
It's like when a person has to write something. It's like, either of you read the J. Michael Straczynski's Superman Earth 1? I do have a point here.
No.
I've heard of that one.
Oh, well, at the very end of it, JMS wrote Clark writing doing the interview, faking the interview, obviously, between him and Superman. But you could tell JMS was intentionally writing false, poorly, to show that he was not, basically he had to write Clark doing a amateurish interview. One that still got him a job, obviously, because Perry put it in there. But at the same time, you could definitely tell that because JMS knows how to write an interview, because he worked in the newspaper, that he's writing himself poorly. It's like when someone has to perform badly on something. Like, a better example, that famous moment near the end of Family Matters, I think I got the right show, where Urkel is playing, or you have Julia White playing Stefan, having to act like Urkel.
Mm-hmm.
You have something like that where he's having to act like one character, mimicking a character he normally plays, but, not doing it as well.
A good actor can play a bad actor, but not the other way around.
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing with writing. A good writer can fake bad writing, but not the other way around.
Yeah.
True.
So in so many words, I'm sorry.
Sorry. One last question. What would you say to an upcoming, like my daughter or an artist or something? What would be your best tool as an artist to have?
Tool. Aside from
like the eye, your pen, online, what is your particular best tool as an artist?
The tool that I needed to develop, which I haven't very well, is networking, actually. You can train everything else, but the thing that you can't control is how many people see your stuff. So if you're out there and you're networking and talking to your peers and superiors and everything, you're able to get your name on people's mouths. They'll be talking about you or to you. And if anybody ever hears about, oh, we have this book or we have this cartoon that we need an extra animator, oh, how about we ask this person because they already know you. If like I'm a very introverted person, so it's been very hard for me to network because I don't want to feel like I'm using people, let's say. But sometimes organically, like with the Comic Skate thing, it was very organic. I didn't feel like I was taking advantage of anyone because there was already a group here and we all had so much in common anyway. It's like, wow, I get to meet people who are like me. That's great.
Right.
So if someone was up and coming, you can train yourself to draw really well. You just put in the hours. But if you can do something deliberately, I would say it's try to meet as many other artists as you can and just make friends. Try to get your name out there, network, and you'll all grow and get better together. And if job opportunities pop up, you have a higher chance of landing those jobs because people know you and they know your work, hopefully.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's part of the reason why sorry.
That is really good advice. I never would have thought of that.
Well, yeah, it's part of the reason why I started a lot of my channels. So I'm hoping to get some people, you know, I mean, I've been kind of lurking within the Comic Skate stuff or making friends, but nothing like, oh, looky, you know, no one really knows me. That's why I'm still trying to build myself up. So I can at least have some bit of a fan base or following or people who are at least interested in knowing that, hey, that guy does good work to be able, before I start doing my own thing, you know, and start an Indiegogo. I don't want to go and cold turkey because I know that's going to go.
Yeah, it's especially hard for pure writers because how can you prove? If you're a good artist, you can just show people your art. But it's harder to prove that you're a good writer because who's going to sit down and read your stuff? Yeah,
the most I can do is show off that I'm a good idea guy and show off the concept arts and all that I've gotten people commissioned.
Yeah, it's really hard to break into comics. There's no question about that.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
A million times more because it's really an entrepreneur thing. When you're doing indie comics, not only are you trying to make one of the hardest things like ever, a comic, a good comic, but you also have to get people who have never heard of you to read them. And that takes years.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been drawing indie comics since 2003. So no one's heard of me until now, let's say, at least organically. So, but that's because I'm bad at networking. That's totally my fault.
Nope, I completely understand.
Yeah. But who's to say? I mean, maybe it takes that long to get good enough for people to say, oh, I want to read that person's work.
Exactly. And like I said, so it was in the case of what I'm doing, I've been building up this idea for years. In fact, to be honest, it started off as fan fiction before I started adding more original characters, and eventually I decided, hey, instead of making this fan fiction, I can rework this and make this be original. I just got to come up with newer versions of the copywritten characters.
Nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. And some of them were cases where they were copywritten characters, but I had my own original OC, hero identities. I just got to give them, come up with a new normal, identity for them.
Yeah.
But someone that's still close enough so I can still make it fit without making it obvious who they're a ripoff or an XP of. That's always a big challenge too, if you ask me, to try and write around a good XP, I should say, because anyone could draw a Superman ripoff or write a Superman ripoff. But it's, what do you do with it?
True.
I mean, it's like, look at Wildstorm. They got 2 Superman ripoffs, Majestic and Apollo, but they're very different characters.
I mean, it could be said that Watchmen was a ripoff, but they did something. Well,
technically, it did start off as a Charlton stuff, but I decided, Alan, you do this. We're not going to have any Charlton characters left to use. Well, and they asked, and that's how it led into them reworking them into original characters. And then he felt like this is better anyway. I could do a lot more. That's the other thing, though. You do an XP, you get more freedom to do it. But unfortunately, the more people doing pot shots too at the source material.
True.
I mean, come on, look at how many times Marvel's done Superman pot shots. Sentry, anyone?
Yeah.
Oh boy, sorry, I'm just veering off for 1 second, but apparently during the Super Bowl halftime show, they started playing a little bit of the Sweet Victory from SpongeBob before going to a different song, and people are pissed off.
Oh, good Lord.
I guess the game's still going on, huh?
Yep, it's still going on, but yeah, that's gotten so much controversy now because people are like, it starts doing the Sweet Victory trumpets, and then it goes into some other song, and everyone's just like, oh,
Oh, did we lose him?
what was that?
Oh, I think we lost you there for a second.
Sorry, I was saying people were asking in dedication to Steven Hillenberg's passing, put Sweet Victory, do that for the halftime show. Nope.
Okay.
They just started doing the trumpets from it, and then it went to some other song. And now people are like, no, you don't tease us like that.
Ah. That's mainstream culture for you.
And the funny thing is, it's from one of those libraries where basically they're copyright-free songs. It's not like it was a rights issue.
Oh.
I forget what that's called. There's that group of songs that are meant for anyone can put in, to their show or TV show that are just like standard or whatnot. Sweet Victory was one of those songs.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, well, I've got to get going.
Oh, all right.
That's all right.
Yeah, but I think we're kind of running out of things to talk about anyway.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for, helping us out with this stuff. This is really awesome of you, dude.
Yep, no,
My pleasure.
Yep.
If you guys have any other questions, especially with, I have a big, I love like helping out younger artists. So if you have any more questions, just feel free to let me know on Twitter or something.
Oh, yeah, I'll let my daughter know and I'll see if she has any for you.
Yeah, I'm happy to help.
So much. That is really awesome of you. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Yep. Now I'll put in a link both in my Twitter and back in my description to your Indiegogo, but it's I'm just playing Probl-O-Matic. So those of you that are still here and with us, or those of you who are checking this out afterwards, give it a look, contribute to it, and let's try and get this thing off the ground.
Yeah, let me know what you guys think of it when you read it too.
Yep. Right.
It's
anyway, while we were going on, I was looking through a few of the strips, and I'm loving it.
I'm glad. Yeah, it's the name's GPrime85 on Twitter. Give me a follow and let me know what you guys think.
Yep. So that's it for tonight, everyone. The game's still going on. Go on, check it out. You're checking this later on. The game's long over. Well, yay to whoever won. Boo to whoever lost.
That's what I always say.
Yep. Okay. Take care, everyone.
Bye, Robert. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. See ya.